Good morning. Happy Wednesday. So, first thing, Common Joe has filed an appeal, and immediately he's run into an issue. The issue that he's run into is that there's no final judgment. The court didn't even get to the escapee doctrine. He'll have to burn that bridge if he can get past the initial hurdle, which is typically you can't appeal a non-final judgment. And in Missouri, at least, the final judgment isn't the conviction, the finding of guilt, it is the sentence. Sentencing is when there is a final judgment. So the court issued an order to show cause as to why they should allow the appeal to proceed, considering there has not been sentencing yet. I guess ChatGPT is letting Common Joe down. And it's just amazing to me that Common Joe, because he doesn't know, like if you don't know the law, you don't know that ChatGPT is giving you shit legal advice. So, but it just amazes me that people discount. Well, I'm sure they do it for doctors too. I'm sure like ChatGPT is out there diagnosing people. Instead of going to the doctor, they're going to ChatGPT because they don't trust doctors, but they trust a large language model. It doesn't make any sense to me. In Cordova versus Hinault, the fraud or troll case, DMA versus fraud or troll, apparently they did an hour of oral arguments. Randy hired an attorney to make the appearance for him. So, you won't hear Randy on the recording. You won't see Randy there. If you went down there for the opportunity to see Randy, well, sorry. He remains an enigma. Probably fat, probably ugly, and probably slovenly. I mean, if you have to go to Thailand to get chicks, you're probably not doing so well. So we don't know the outcome of that. In Decasto versus Clark County, the court granted the defendant's motion to stay discovery because, in the court's words, we're probably going to be dismissing most or all of the defendants under judicial immunity, quasi-judicial immunity, prosecutorial immunity. Failure to state a claim. Like he sued Clark County for something that the municipal police did. Like county, city, they're different entities. The police are responsible to the city, not to the county. But DeCastro's another legal genius, so what do you expect out of him? Angry Vet versus Farrar, Kevin Soper versus Farrar. Angry Vets filed a 1983 lawsuit against the judges, the judge, the clerk, the prosecutor in the case where he got, I think he got convicted in that case. I'm 99% sure he got convicted in that case. Anyway, they filed a motion to dismiss because, well, judges have judicial immunity still. I mean, like I know everybody in this community doesn't believe it, from Lane Myers all the way through Chili DeCastro to Angry Vet. I mean, people just don't seem to believe this. James Springer suing that judge in New Mexico. But judges have judicial immunity. It's a real thing. I'm really sorry. I know maybe you don't like it, but it's a real thing. And then the clerks, when they're doing administrative tasks at the request of the judge, they have quasi-judicial immunity. Prosecutors have prosecutorial immunity. Cities and counties have sovereign immunity. There might be some Monell liability there, but you rarely see Monell liability claims work. I mean, it's a big hurdle. There's a lot you have to prove to show Monell liability. So that case is going nowhere quick. We are coming up on one of my favorite today's the 15th, so I think in another week, I think, what's his name? Rusty Moore. I don't know why I find that case particularly interesting, but Rusty Moore is either going to go to trial or plead, I think, in a week. But it's the last omnibus hearing, so either he pleads there or they're going to set the matter for trial, is my understanding. So we'll see how that shakes out. We'll see if auditing the audit was even close to right. See if everything that I've reviewed has been even close to right. And then just to respond to a comment, one of my most retarded commenters, and I have several very retarded commenters, and the common thing between them is they always focus on what Iran has done, and they completely ignore everything the U.S. and Israel have done, right? So it's just like out of the blue, Iran did this, out of the blue, for no reason whatsoever, just random crazy stuff. The bombing of the troops in Beirut. Guys, the new narrative is we've been at war with Iran for 50 years, or whatever nonsense they're saying. Anyway, he said, the analogy is like this. The second war the U.S. got involved in was against Tripoli. And, they were attacking our ships and enslaving the crews and the passengers. And, we went to war with them over that. And basically, Iran's the same thing. Yeah, right. Okay. So, here's the big difference. We didn't do shit to Tripoli. We were going about our own business. It wasn't even U.S. stuff. It was our merchant ships, U.S. flagged merchant ships that were being attacked by the Barbary pirates. If you ever wonder where the term barbarian came from, it came from the Barbary Coast, North Africa, because these people were pretty brutal. Engaged in the slave trade. Yes, kids, just so you know, white people were enslaved, and it wasn't just white Europeans who were engaged in the slave trade. Anyway, we didn't do anything to provoke them. Completely not analogous to Iran, where in the 50s, we, the U.S., overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran and installed a dictator. Our puppet. We did that. What had they done to us prior? Nothing other than exercise their national sovereignty and express a desire to nationalize the oil production, i.e., use the oil production and the proceeds therefrom to benefit the people of Iran instead of multinational corporations. The shock, the horror, we need to overthrow this evil, terrible regime and install a dictator who's going to let us have all the oil we want and give nothing back to the Iranian people for their natural resources. So we have to ignore that. We have to ignore that in order for this idiot's analogy to work. We have to ignore what the U.S. did. We have to ignore decades since the 80s, since 1980-ish, I think. So 40 years of sanctions against Iran that the U.S. did against Iran. We have to ignore that. We have to ignore the fact that the U.S. entered into the JCPOA, a nuclear non-proliferation treaty with Iran, where in exchange for them agreeing to not refine the uranium, enrich the uranium beyond a certain percent, and to allow IAEA inspectors to come in and make sure that they were complying with the terms, the U.S. would ease sanctions. Well, they did what they were supposed to do. They let the inspectors come in. They were keeping their refining down below the level required. And the U.S. decided not to ease the sanctions. Crazy. I mean, crazy that they did what they were supposed to do and we didn't do what we were supposed to do, but somehow they're the bad guys. They're the barbarians. They're the people engaging in slave trades. They're the worst people ever. Crazy. Crazy how the U.S. has seized Iranian billions of dollars in Iranian money that was in our banks, and we're like, you know what, we're just going to seize this money. The U.S. seized Iranian assets. But you know what? The U.S. has been funding groups like the Kurds specifically to destabilize Iran. But, you know, I guess Iran is probably funding like Appalachian hillbillies to try to make the South rise again too, right? It must be, right? They must be doing that because they're the bad guys. They're the barbarians. The U.S. and Israel have been destabilizing the entire region. The entire Middle East has been being destabilized by a combination of the U.S. and Israel for decades, which is not in Iran's best interest because Israel has been lobbying the U.S. for the last 30 some odd years to overthrow the Iranian government and to throw Iran into political chaos. For 30 years, the stated goal of Israel is to get the U.S. to blow up Iran. For 30 years. Obviously, Israel is their enemy because Israel has been lobbying the U.S. for 30 years. They say death to the U.S. But what have they done, first of all? And can you see why they might? Because the U.S. has been sanctioning them for 30 plus years. Because Israel's been lobbying the U.S. to destroy Iran for 30 plus years. Because the U.S. and Iran have been funding political groups, terrorist organizations, whatever, to destabilize Iran. It is in Iran's national best interest to contain Israel because Israel's stated goal is to overthrow Iran. So why don't we just contain Israel? It makes perfect sense to fund Hezbollah. It makes perfect sense to fund Hamas. By the way, Israel also funded Hamas. And Israel and the U.S. have funded ISIS, which also attacks Iran and Iranian interests. I mean, everything Iran has done funding opposition groups to Israel has been done by the U.S. and Israel in funding opposition groups to Iran. And Israel has a goal of destabilizing the region. That is a clear stated goal because if a country is in political chaos, it can't effectively oppose Israel's goals to do whatever. So they've constantly engaged in this. And Iran has constantly engaged in funding groups that are going to stabilize particular areas and oppose Israel, which is in Iran's national best interest. It just is. Prior to and the U.S. has engaged in assassination, clearly illegal assassination actions. General Soleimani, we assassinated in Iraq. We violated another country's sovereignty to assassinate a completely different country's political figure. But prior to the 12-Day War, you may recall that Israel bombed Iran's embassy in, was it Syria or Damascus? Or where was it? Was it in Lebanon or Syria? I don't remember. But Israel bombed an embassy. Clearly illegal under international law. But they did it. And then Iran didn't even really respond to that. And then Israel and the U.S. were engaged in discussions with Iran. And during those discussions, they decided they were going to launch a war. And they sent in assassination strikes to try to take out the Iranian leadership, and then we ended up dropping the Moab bombs to try to destroy the enrichment sites. We started the 12-day war. We did. They were content to negotiate. Was it in Qatar that we either us or Israel, who is essentially us because we co-sign everything they do, tried to take out the negotiation teams during that? Anyway, so they agreed to a ceasefire. The U.S. used that opportunity to build up forces in the area. And then again, we launched a sneak attack with a decapitation strike. Again, decapitation strikes, for the average listener, you might not be aware of it, but they are crimes. They're war crimes. You're not supposed to target the civilian government, because the civilian government is who you have to negotiate with to get a resolution to the war. But if your goal is to just destabilize the country and you don't give a shit, then you do the decapitation strike because you're not trying to get a resolution. So we started this off with a war crime. We launched the attack. They weren't looking to attack anybody. There's no evidence that they were about to attack anybody. Both wars over the last year, we started. But they're the barbarians. And we've got to protect their civilians. Well, you know what's really crazy? Here's what's really crazy. During the uprisings in 2025, where magical numbers of people got killed, in order to combat that, in order to effectively get the situation under control, what Iran had to do, and this is interesting, is they had to cut off the internet to everywhere outside of Iran, and they had to block Starlink signals into Iran. Why? Why would they have to do that? Oh, well, maybe it's because Mossad and probably the CIA were the ones instigating and fomenting this uprising. And there were lots of, they're not really Mossad agents, but they're people who are paid, funded, trained by Mossad and probably the CIA. A lot of these little groups were rounded up with clear, unequivocal links to Mossad, to backing from Israel, support, intelligence, directions, orders, everything like that from Israel. Isn't that crazy? Just about every popular uprising, like the Maidan coup, just about every one, the Arab Spring, like all of these are fomented by the CIA, Mossad, or a combination thereof. But Iran is the barbarians. So as long as we ignore everything that the U.S. has done and everything that Israel has done, sure, maybe Iran does look bad. But when you actually look at what the U.S. and Israel have done, then all of a sudden, Iran seems to have shown pretty great restraint. Like the opposite of barbarians. And I'm not an Iran fan. I don't give a shit. I don't care about Iran. I work with an Iranian guy. He's part of the Iranian diaspora. He does not like the Iranian government. But that's the only interest I have in Iran, other than the fact that U.S. blood and treasure is being spent over a nonsense war that we can't win militarily. There's no military solution to this. That's my only concern with Iran. And that and the fact that they're blockading the Strait of Hormuz, which is going to just F the world's economy for the foreseeable future. Anyway, it would really be nice if the U.S. got out of the Middle East. I would love to see President Trump say, you know what, I made a campaign promise back in 2016 to get us out of Middle East, get us out of pointless wars. So I'm going to get in actual peace talks, and I'm going to concede, and we're going to get all of our bases out of the Middle East. I would be so in favor of that. Let everybody else police themselves. Get us out of it. Get us out of the regime change operation. Get us out of the fighting wars on behalf of Israel operations. Just get us out of it. Stop funding terrorists. I mean, simple things, basic things. I don't know, maybe reduce our debt, maybe increase spending, I don't know, on local infrastructure and hospitals and roads and things like that. Who knows? Who knows what we could do with all the money we'd save? Thanks for watching. Have a great day.